Claudia Romano never said it out loud for fear of sounding like a bad employee, but one of her favorite parts of her workday was lunch. She enjoyed many aspects of her job, working with her team, especially now that Brad had stopped being a butt wipe, collaborating on interesting projects with clients, and even the tedious tasks that helped her learn more about the apparel industry that Bestman Inc. was part of. But her lunch hour in the Bestman cafeteria was especially pleasant. The food was reasonably priced, and the cuisine was varied. Bestman believed in hearty, balanced meals, reflecting the values of their blue-collar customers. It wasn't unusual to eat cuisine from a different country each day of the work week. In fact, when Jack, Claudia's younger brother, attended a month-long summer internship program at Bestman, he'd raved that the cafeteria served better Italian fare than their father's. Claudia, of course, had sworn to keep that comment a secret from Tony. Still, it wasn't the food that made her lunches great. And it wasn't the vast food hall with its warm yet modern decor. The seating was comfortable, and the high ceilings and tall glass windows flooded the space with dappled sunlight. There was even a large outdoor patio with manicured lawns between the buildings, where employees could eat outside among tiki torches and flowers like lavender, lemongrass, marigolds, and chrysanthemums that naturally kept insects away. But it wasn't the scenery that made her lunches ideal. It was the people. Claudia got to meet and share lunch with interesting Bestman employees from other floors and buildings, people she wouldn't normally cross paths with. Sure, she could meet staff at the large Bestman gym or at morale-boosting events, but lunch was when she truly got to know her new work friends, like Minho, Kathy, and Jason. Others often joined them, but these three were her closest lunch buddies. Jason Kilpatrick, with his red hair and quick wit, had a gregarious, outgoing personality that naturally drew people in. It made perfect sense that he was one of the top salespeople in his department. He charmed new clients with his personality and humor, then impressed them with his keen understanding of their needs and how Bestman's products could serve them. Kathy Garcia was Jason's opposite, shy, soft-spoken, but incredibly intelligent with a heart of gold. Her petite frame and mousy chocolate brown hair often led people to underestimate her, but she had a surprising strength beneath her gentle exterior. Orphaned at a young age, she had joined Bestman as a high school intern through its program for foster children, and later received a scholarship from the company. Bestman only required her to work in the IT department for 4 years after graduation. Now, 5 years later, she had no plans to leave. When people first met Ho Jang, all they noticed were his good looks, often comparing him to K-drama or K-pop stars. But his friends, Claudia, Jason, and Kathy, knew there was so much more to him. Minho was laid back, with a wide range of interests. He was an avid golfer, a book lover, and a traveler who enjoyed attending conventions where he cosplayed with costumes his sister sewed. At lunch, he'd often share photos from his latest conventions. Recently, Claudia and her friends noticed that his girlfriend was no longer in the pictures he shared, and they learned that they had broken up. They respected his privacy, but word spread quickly, and suddenly Minho was a topic of gossip throughout the building. Women began visiting his office in the IT department for flimsy reasons, just to flirt. He even got asked out by strangers on his way to his car. Minho took it in stride. He knew these flirtations weren't real. People saw an image, not the real him. They didn't know that he wasn't going to live out a K-drama fantasy where he'd give piggyback rides or dramatically catch someone before they fell. When he was younger, the attention had been fun, but as he matured, he focused on living a life that genuinely interested him, pursuing his unique hobbies and maintaining close relationships with family and true friends. He didn't need the empty attention that came with his looks. However, his popularity had made him cautious. Minho was always kind and clear when rejecting advances, but he was unprepared for someone like Deborah Connor. A salesperson in Jason's department, Deborah had occasionally joined them for lunch, polite and friendly but not overly flirtatious. She'd been pleasant enough in passing, exchanging casual hallway chats and coffee refills with him. But when Deborah learned he was single, her demeanor changed. She began sitting next to him at lunch, her flirtation becoming so obvious that Claudia and Jason teased him about it. He took it in stride, thinking it harmless even when she asked him out a few weeks later. When he declined, he assumed they'd remain friendly, but she didn't stop. He started closing his office door when she began showing up unannounced. Deborah also began sending daily emails with good morning messages or jokes, all of which he ignored. Things escalated when Deborah, having overheard Minho's plans to go to a popular axe-throwing bar with friends, decided to show up uninvited. She introduced herself to his friends, claiming she'd been bored and thought of him, but his friends quickly realized he hadn't invited her. No one teased him about it this time. After a weekend of worrying, Minho resolved to give her one final warning before reporting her to HR. He felt uneasy reporting a single bar incident, but he knew it was necessary to protect himself. On Monday, he headed to the break room, only to find Deborah already there, sitting at a small table with her laptop. When he walked in, she looked up, her expression brightening as if she'd been waiting for him.
"Hi, Minho. We had such a great time on Friday. Next time I'll pick the bar,"
she said loudly, clearly aiming for nearby coworkers to overhear. Minho's stomach dropped. This was worse than he'd thought. He sat across from her, keeping his distance, and spoke firmly.
Deborah, I know we've been friendly, but I need to be clear. I'm not interested in dating you or socializing outside of work. It made me uncomfortable seeing you at the bar on Friday, and if it happens again, I'll go to HR.
Deborah leaned forward, a smile still plastered on her face, and whispered,
"Now, Minho, calm down. I really like you, but you'll only embarrass yourself if you report me. Everyone knows you're the company ladies' man. Coworkers bump into each other outside work all the time. You're the one who chose to sit here. Should I report you?"
Minho felt trapped. Her words sounded reasonable, but he realized she had no reason to be in his break room 4 floors up from her office. Had she been waiting for him?
Have you been coming to this floor hoping to run into me?
He asked, his voice rising with frustration. Inside, Minho was grappling with an intense mix of emotions. He'd spent years carefully navigating workplace relationships, striving to be polite, respectful, and never misinterpreted. But Deborah's relentless pursuit was starting to chip away at his calm exterior, pushing him to a place he was deeply uncomfortable with. Minho felt trapped, his frustration mounting as he realized he was being coerced into interactions he didn't want. He'd tried to handle it with gentle deflections, assuming that she'd take the hint. But each ignored email and unreturned smile only seemed to make her more determined. The realization that Deborah was purposely going out of her way, even coming up to his floor just to bump into him, was almost infuriating. He didn't want to be rude, but he was growing weary of constantly having to manage her unwanted attention. For Minho, the situation felt doubly frustrating. Not only was his personal space being violated, but his own sense of autonomy felt threatened. He had always been a laid-back, non-confrontational person, and to be put in this position, having to spell out boundaries that she continued to disregard, left him feeling unsettled and even helpless. Before Deborah could respond, a nearby throat cleared, drawing their attention. They both turned to see Kathy standing close by, her face expressionless. Neither had noticed her enter the break room. Deborah quickly closed her laptop and stood up, throwing Minho a smirk.
"See you two at lunch,"
she said, before brushing past them and exiting the break room.
Coming in for a snack?
Minho asked Kathy, trying to regain his composure.
"No, just passing by."
She replied in her usual deadpan tone.
"I'll see you at lunch. It's Meatloaf Monday."
She walked away without another word. Minho felt shaken but relieved. When lunchtime arrived, Kathy met him at his office, clearly making sure he wouldn't skip lunch. Minho had an appointment with HR afterward and wanted to be prepared. He didn't want to hesitate and be second-guessed for not reporting harassment right away. They chose a smaller table in the cafeteria, and soon Jason and Claudia joined them. Minho felt a sense of relief. There was no room for Deborah, but his relief was short-lived. Deborah appeared with a too bright smile.
"Hey, no room? I'll grab another chair."
Jason and Claudia, ever friendly, began making space. But Kathy didn't budge. In fact, she spread out her things, blocking any attempt to fit another chair.
"There's no room for you,"
she said flatly. Deborah's smile didn't falter. Ignoring Kathy, she tried to squeeze in beside Minho. He half stood, ready to leave. but Kathy's next words stopped him.
You're making Min Ho uncomfortable, and it's irritating me.
Kathy announced in a calm, firm tone.
We're tired of watching you harass him. You crowd his personal space, you keep flirting when he's clearly not interested, and you even showed up at a bar uninvited. Stop harassing him and leave us to our meal.
The surrounding tables fell silent as Kathy's words sank in. Jason and Claudia realized how aggressive Deborah had been and regretted not noticing sooner. Kathy, who rarely spoke up, had seen Minho's distress and acted. Deborah's smile cracked and her tone was patronizing.
Kathy, you're overreacting. We're all friends here. Maybe you have a crush on Minho and don't see things clearly.
No, Deborah, I understand perfectly. Friends don't harass each other. I interned with HR and know some of the managers, so I made them aware of your behavior. They're watching right now.
Kathy pointedly turned her gaze towards a nearby table. Deborah paled, turning to see several HR managers observing the scene, one discreetly recording on her phone. Kathy's words were a final blow, but Deborah tried to recover, plastering on a strained smile as she replied,
Asking someone out isn't a crime, Kathy. You're blowing this way out of proportion. I've heard rumors that women throughout the building have flirted with Minho, and I don't see anyone calling them out. You've made a huge scene over something trivial and completely embarrassed me in front of everyone. I have every right to ask him to lunch, same as anyone else. Maybe you're just jealous and projecting all this onto me.
Kathy didn't flinch, her expression remaining steady and calm. She simply replied,
I know exactly what I saw, and I'm not the only one who noticed. You crossed the line, and it's time you accepted that.
Deborah's face flushed, her carefully maintained composure slipping.
This is absurd,
She muttered, but her voice was louder than intended, carrying across the cafeteria.
This is workplace bullying. I'll be talking to HR about you, Kathy.
She clutched her tray tightly, her knuckles white as she continued.
I won't stand for being treated like a criminal when I've done nothing wrong. You owe me an apology, and I'll be expecting it.
She glanced around, clearly hoping for support, but instead, a murmur spread through the surrounding tables. Employees whispered to each other, some casting disapproving looks in her direction. A few shook their heads, clearly seeing through her attempts to play the victim. Someone muttered,
Unbelievable.
while another whispered,
I can't believe she thought that would work.
Minho sat there, stunned, watching the scene unfold. Kathy had not only noticed his discomfort, but had stepped up to defend him with unwavering strength. He'd never expected anyone to stand up for him so publicly, and a mixture of gratitude and a strange, misplaced shame washed over him. He knew it wasn't his fault, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he'd somehow drawn everyone into his uncomfortable situation. Deborah, realizing she wasn't going to get the sympathy she'd hoped for, huffed in frustration. With an exaggerated sigh, she turned on her heel, still clutching her tray of untouched food, and stalked away. Her steps were brisk, almost stomping as she made her way to the trash can, where she dumped her tray with a bit too much force before marching out of the cafeteria. The murmur of voices grew louder, employees now openly discussing what they'd just witnessed. Minho, still seated, felt the weight of everyone's eyes on him, but he took a deep breath, steadying himself as he glanced over at Kathy, who met his gaze with a calm, reassuring look. The HR representative, Ms. Linton, a seasoned professional with a calm, composed demeanor, gestured for Minho to step aside with her for a private conversation. As they moved out of the cafeteria's bustling environment and into a quieter corner of the hallway, she offered him a reassuring smile.
Mr. Jang, we're aware that this situation has been escalating for some time,
Ms. Linton began in a calm, professional tone.
and we'd like to thank you for your patience. Kathy's willingness to speak up was instrumental, and it helped us witness some of Deborah's behavior firsthand. That gives us a stronger foundation for a full investigation.
She paused, her expression softening as she continued.
I know it's not easy to come forward in these situations, but we want to make sure you feel comfortable and safe at work.
Minho nodded, appreciating her words, but still feeling the weight of the awkwardness surrounding the situation.
Honestly, I've been trying to handle it quietly. I thought I could manage by just ignoring her, but I realize now it's only made things worse. I didn't want to make a scene or cause trouble.
He exhaled, glancing down.
It's just uncomfortable, and I didn't want people thinking I was overreacting.
Ms. Linton gave him an understanding nod.
You're not alone in feeling that way, Minho. Unfortunately, many employees think ignoring the behavior will make it go away, but often it just reinforces the behavior in the other person. We're here to ensure a respectful and professional environment for everyone.
She glanced over at Kathy, who was still seated at the table with Jason and Claudia, their eyes on Minho and Ms. Linton.
We take this kind of harassment very seriously, and we have procedures in place to protect employees from retaliation.
Minho looked up, some relief in his eyes.
Thank you. I'd like to provide whatever information you need.
Perfect. Let's meet formally this afternoon in my office. I'll want to go over all the incidents, including emails, unplanned encounters, and anything else that stands out. We'll make sure this gets documented thoroughly. Meanwhile, please know that you're fully supported in this process.
Ms. Linton's voice was steady but warm, conveying genuine concern. Minho felt his shoulders relax. He wasn't used to being in situations like this. He'd always been so laid back, friendly with coworkers, but never involved in workplace drama.
I'll bring everything I have.
He assured her. She nodded approvingly.
Good. And if anything else happens in the meantime, anything at all, don't hesitate to reach out, even before our meeting. We're here to protect you and ensure a comfortable work environment.
Ms. Linton extended her hand, and Minho shook it, feeling a renewed sense of security. As they returned to the cafeteria, Ms. Linton offered him one more reassuring smile.
Thank you, Minho. We'll take it from here, and please thank Kathy as well. She demonstrated admirable courage.
Watching her walk away, Minho felt a surge of gratitude. Kathy's calm intervention and HR's immediate response were turning what had been a painful and isolating experience into one where he felt both heard and protected. When he returned to the table, his friends looked up, waiting for his reaction.
Looks like they're going to handle it,
He said with a small smile, taking his seat. Kathy's face softened slightly, her calm demeanor giving way to a look of support and quiet pride. Jason clapped him on the back, and Claudia offered a warm smile. Kathy gave a slight nod.
Glad they're stepping in. It was long overdue.
With that, they moved on from the subject, shifting to lighter, more pleasant topics. Laughter soon filled the table as they shared stories about their weekend plans, new projects, and Jason's latest office pranks. For the first time in weeks, Minho felt a real sense of relief. The group's conversation and warmth brought him comfort, reminding him of the strength of true friendships. They saw him for who he really was, beyond appearances and surface-level impressions. And together, they enjoyed their lunch, unburdened, happy, and connected. Later that day, Minho knocked on Kathy's office door, and she waved him in. As he entered, he hesitated for a moment, but then spoke with genuine gratitude.
Kathy, I don't know how to thank you for defending me. I didn't know anyone had noticed how uncomfortable I was, but when things escalated, I realized I had to do something more than just ignore it.
Kathy regarded Minho with a steady gaze, her expression unreadable. Though she usually kept her thoughts and feelings well contained, there was one thing Deborah had accurately observed. Kathy did have a small crush on Minho. It wasn't something she intended to act on, nor was it something that dominated her thoughts. But that quiet admiration did make her a bit more aware of him, and she'd noticed that he seemed distant whenever Deborah was around. Seeing Deborah's relentless advances had been hard to ignore. The one-sided flirtation had annoyed Kathy, not simply because of her own feelings, but because she couldn't stand watching Minho be harassed, especially when he hadn't encouraged it. While she accepted that Minho only viewed her as a friend, she couldn't sit idly by while he was treated unfairly. She would have defended any friend that way.
Minho, you did nothing wrong. It's unfortunate that Deborah crossed so many lines. But I'd like to think that as friends, we'll always support each other.
She said sincerely. Her warm smile lit up her face, and for a moment, Minho noticed the beauty in her gentle features, something he hadn't fully appreciated before. She adjusted her glasses and turned back to her monitors, ready to resume work.
I'd like to think we all can at least do that for each other, right?
Minho's gratitude deepened and he found himself smiling back.
Would you like to walk out together at the end of the day?
He asked, knowing that otherwise she might work into the evening. It was his way of encouraging her work-life balance, something he often chided her about.
Sure.
Kathy replied with a small, knowing smile. She saw right through his intentions, but appreciated them all the same. Minho quietly excused himself from her office with a renewed sense of relief. For the first time in days, he felt genuinely at ease. This ordeal had reminded him of the importance of true friends, those who looked out for each other, accepted each other, and saw beyond the surface. Things were going to be fine, and as he looked forward to his week ahead, he felt grateful not only for Kathy's support, but for the promise of a good week, and the chance to share a walk with her after work.